Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Friday, June the 6th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, I guess this whole thing between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, President Trump, Elon Musk. Look, I've had enough of it, and I don't know how else to tell you. I've had enough of it. I really don't see what it does for the country. I don't think it does a lot for Musk either, by the way. And it doesn't appear to be hurting President Trump, because why would it hurt President Trump? And apparently, and I've been listening to some analysis of this. Clay Travis, I thought, had a very interesting analysis on his show today. He was saying that, Elon Musk is a businessman who's accustomed to basically doing whatever he wants to do, or in most cases, he's been a very successful businessman. I mean, the organizations that he's run over the years have become extremely successful. I mean, you can't deny that. He's built great companies. And of course, while he's done these things, he's done them by having total control and making decisions and going in, taking a look at the situation, and then immediately making decisions to make things better. And they usually turn out better. The guy is brilliant. Let's not take that away from him. That's not the way government works. That is not the way government works. And I'm pretty sure then when Elon Musk and some of these other people working on Dodge, when they went into the bureaucracy and they started seeing what's in this bureaucracy, I'm sure they were devastated. They were sitting there saying, how can this be? How can, for example, 1 million people on Medicaid be people without papers, meaning they shouldn't be receiving Medicaid, for example? That's just that's one oversight of, I'm sure, many, many, many other things that are happening in the federal government and the way we run these programs that has to drive people crazy. And somebody like Elon Musk, who's used to making things efficient and doing things right away and putting in play his ideas, I'm sure that this must have been very frustrating for him. But if he didn't know that when he took the job, then he's very unrealistic too. He's very naive. I mean, did he really think he was going to come in and make these changes in the public sector as quickly as he could make them in the private sector? I mean, even if you tried to implement every one of the things that he wants to do, it takes time. That's just the nature of government. That's why government and the private sector are completely different. I mean, that's just the reality of it. There's nothing here that should have been a surprise to him. But anyway, so apparently that, according to Clay Travis, and I think Clay is right about this, I think that's probably what just caused this frustration in Elon Musk, that he was watching the way we run a government, and he was saying, how is it possible that the government of the United States is that inefficient? Well, it is. It is. And government is always going to be more inefficient than the private sector. That's just the way it is. I mean, that's nothing new. And I think that's, again, I'm just going by what Clay Travis was saying. I think he's right. I mean, I think he's right about this. I think that probably drove Elon Musk, who's, I guess, a perfectionist, the kind of guy who, as I say, he's built a lot of great things, probably drove him crazy to see how much money we're spending here and how much money we're spending there, how inefficient this is and how inefficient that is. So I can understand that. I can understand why he was upset and probably frustrated that he couldn't get done all the things that he could have done, let's say, if this was a private company. If he took over a private company, he could turn it around just by implementing decisions, getting rid of this, getting rid of that. That's not the way the public sector works. It doesn't work that way. There's all kinds of things that you got to go through if you want to make changes. That's why it takes longer. But I understand his frustration with that. Then I think, as I write in my post tomorrow, a complete misunderstanding of how we do things with respect to the budget. Look, this first step that we're taking is reconciliation, and that is a very narrow window that he has to do things. You can't do all these changes that he's proposing in reconciliation. Now, you can do it in other bills. And I was listening to Speaker Johnson today saying, hey, there's a lot more stuff coming. Let's do this. And there's a lot more stuff coming because there's a lot of Republicans who want to make these changes too. But I guess I am glad that President Trump did not fight back like he usually does. I think, he's been pretty cool actually during all of this. He's been pretty cool, calm, and collected. He's basically just letting Musk air out his frustrations. And there's even talk that the two of them might get together. They were talking about that today, Friday, that they were going to have a conversation. Apparently they didn't. My guess is that they will eventually. Whether they're going to reconcile completely, I don't know. But I think you'll see Musk stop this kind of criticism of impeaching Trump and even bringing up that stuff about Epstein, which is very dangerous to bring up because Musk could open himself up for a defamation suit if he doesn't watch what he's saying. I mean, if you accuse somebody of this stuff with Epstein, you better have the goods, because that is a perfect case for defamation. So all I can tell you, let me say hello there to Mike Castell, who's sending me a message. All I can tell you is that both sides need to just cool it. And again, I think Trump has actually been pretty cool about this. But Musk needs to relax, take a break, and realize what the alternative is. The Democrats are not going to welcome him back. That's not going to happen. Nor is he going to get a better deal. With the Democrats. Do you think the Democrats are going to give you a better budget deal than this? I mean, you're crazy. So anyway, that's those are my thoughts. I have a post coming out about this tomorrow. The two of them should just reconcile. They don't have to work together, but Musk needs to stop. And I think for the most part, he has stopped. He's not saying things anymore like he was on the other day or whatever. So, let's just settle this, guys. There's bigger fish to fry. Believe me, bigger fish to fry. I have a post over at the American Thinker today, Friday, where I'm talking about this decision by the Supreme Court. You had the government of Mexico suing U.S. gun manufacturers for all the guns that are going south. And as I've stated before, guns are indeed going south. There's a lot of guns going south. Unfortunately, there are. And many of these guns end up in the hands of bad people. In fact, most of them do. But the problem is not the fault of the U.S. gun manufacturers. The problem is that security in Mexico is not as good as it should be. And that's what the real problem is. They need to do a better job down there of controlling the situation. And they haven't. And that is why you have such a chaos, if you will, down in Mexico between these cartels and all of that, because they have vicious guns, they have very dangerous weapons, they have a lot of cash, and all of it is coming through the border. It is coming through the border. Let's not kid ourselves. It is. But it's also coming through the border because the Mexican government is not doing a very good job, frankly, of controlling their side of the border. And that's what I talk about in my article. Now, the case itself of Mexico versus the U.S. gun manufacturers, the reason they lost that case is because they couldn't prove that these gun manufacturers were manufacturing these guns for the intent of having those guns going to Mexico to kill people. I mean, that's a pretty silly thing to prove, impossible thing to prove. So that's legally why they lost the case. But technically, they've got to do a better job of controlling their side of the border. They can do it if they wanted to. They could do it. They could control their side of the border if they want to. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, they have not done a good job. And that's why these guns go south, and that's why all this killing is going on, and it's not getting, unfortunately, it's not getting any better, and it's not going to get better, because the more, I was talking to a Mexican friend about this the other day, the more that we have closed the border, the more that these cartels are fighting for each other for whatever routes remain. There are certain routes to come into the United States, and there are less and less of them because we've shut the border. So they're fighting with each other to see, who controls whatever traffic there is. So it's a bad situation, but Mexico has to do a better job, much better job of controlling its side of the border. Well, June 6th is one of those days in history that a lot of things happened. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them today. Of course, June 6th, 1944, D-Day. It was happening right now as we speak, going back 81 years. And that was the invasion, of course, of Europe that went through Normandy in France. And whenever I think of June 6th, I think of my friend Bob Jaggers, who passed away in 2021. He was not involved in the actual landing, but he was in one of the ships behind those ships that were landing. And something I learned today, and I just saw this, so I have not verified whether this is true or false. So I'm just passing on what I heard. That the Pope's father was a veteran on D-Day. He was there on D-Day, landed on D-Day. Again, that's what I read. I cannot verify it one way or the other. But that would be awesome if that's true, that Pope Leo's father was one of the D-Day veterans in 1944. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Another guy who landed on D-Day, that if you're a baseball fan, you know his name. That's Yogi Berra, who was a young man in 1944. I don't know whether he was with the Army or with the Navy, but he was there. And Yogi Berra, of course, went on to have a great Hall of Fame Major League career, the great catcher for the Yankee teams of the 1950s. So we remember today D-Day in 1944. And by the way, a couple of quick things about D-Day. One of the greatest speeches that I ever heard was President Reagan in 1984 when he went to France to celebrate what was then the 40th anniversary of D-Day. And he gave this amazing speech. It's in YouTube. You can pick it up. I mean, you need to listen to it. It's just absolutely fantastic, the speech that he gave. Of course, when Reagan gave that speech, most of the veterans who were there were men in their 60s and 70s. So they were still there. Quite a few of them were there. So it was a very memorable moment for those veterans. So check out that speech. Reagan in France in 1984, remembering what was then the 40th anniversary of D-Day. It's a fantastic speech. It's one of the best speeches that Reagan ever gave. And he had a ton of great speeches, as you know. Another thing about this day, 1968, this one I remember quite well. 1968, this was the day that Bobby Kennedy was shot, Senator Kennedy, who was running for president. Now, he may have been shot the night before, but he died on June the 6th, or the other way around. He was shot on June 6th and died the 7th. But anyway, June the 6th, Robert Kennedy was killed he was campaigning for president in LA. And I'm sure you've seen the video where he came out, delivered his victory speech and said, now it's on to Chicago. And then he went into the kitchen and there was the shooting. But great moment. I didn't see that one on TV, but I remember hearing about it the next day when I woke up from my parents. And of course, it was on this day, and this is 2004, that President Reagan passed away. So that's another connection to June 6th. So a lot of things that happened on June 6th, that two of them, at least I remember, the passing of, or the shooting of Bobby Kennedy, and then the passing of President Reagan. Of course, President Reagan was very ill by this time in 2004. We knew he was going to die. It was just a matter of time. And of course, Bobby Kennedy, no, that was a shocker. That was a shocker, waking up the next morning and going down for breakfast and hearing from my father that Kennedy had been shot. And I'm just going, wow, how did that happen? So anyway, just one of those moments in your life that you're always going to remember. And then, of course, D-Day. I don't have any personal reference of that, but a historical reference that all of us have from D-Day. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. I hope that everybody enjoys yourself this weekend. And we're going to be chatting with our friend George Rodriguez on Sunday night, as we always do. But you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you later. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.